Now that we are clear about the idea of diversification and the benefits that diversification brings to the portfolio in terms of a reduction in the risk, right? Reduction in risk. We do need to try and address the issue of how much diversification, So how many stocks should the portfolio have when you are diversifying the portfolio, right? So that's something that we're going to address in this particular section, along with broad benefits of having a certain number of portfolio stocks in the portfolio. Plus, we will also discuss a little bit about what is the individual security specific risk that comes to the portfolio when you add a security to the portfolio, something commonly denoted by a term known as beta. Right. So let's discuss first in terms of diversification. Now, we've already seen the benefits. If we keep adding securities to the portfolio, usually the risk of the portfolio keeps coming down. So if we were to plot, let's say, something like the risk of the portfolio on the y-axis and the number of stocks on the x-axis. Typically, if you have one stock, you have a certain risk, and then as you keep increasing the number of stocks, the risk will keep coming down. But what would logically happen is that beyond a point, the risk going down, the rate in fall of the risk, first it'll start at a faster rate and then it slows down over a period of time, right? And then it stagnates. So logically, the risk cannot become zero when you have stocks in the portfolio because there will be some finite risk. So beyond a point, the curve would become flattish and we will reach a point that when we add stocks to the portfolio, for a while the standard deviation falls. But then if you keep adding more stocks to the portfolio, the reduction in risk is not as much, right? Now, there are mathematical formulae which will suggest that as you keep increasing the size of the portfolio, as you keep increasing n, where n is equals to size of portfolio, then beyond a point, the reduction in risk becomes smaller and smaller. But to kind of get this data from live markets, what we are going to do is we are going to look at data with respect to four portfolios, the following four portfolios. One with Tata Steel, a stock Tata Steel and only that. The next one with the top 30 stocks in Bombay Stock Exchange, BSE, including Tata Steel. That is known as an index called Sensex. Then the top 100 stocks in BSE, including Tata Steel, that's an index called as BSE 100. And then the top 500, which is BSE 500. Right? So obviously in the first case, we're looking at one stock. In the second case, we're looking at 30, then 100, then 500. And then we have to kind of identify what is the risk that each of these portfolios have. Four portfolios, four different risks is what we are going to calculate. We're going to calculate risk in the form of standard deviation, and we will do that with respect to live market data. So for this, we are going to look at data that we have available for the last 1 year. So what are we looking at? We're going to look at data for the last 1 year for the four portfolios. Portfolio 1 including only Tata Steel. Portfolio 2 including BSE Sensex, which is the top 30 stocks, which includes Tata Steel. Portfolio 3 including BSE 100, which is the top 100 stocks. It includes BSE 30 as well as Tata Steel. Portfolio 4, which is BSE 500, which includes 100, 30, and Tata Steel, of course, right? We have the data for this for the last 1 year, starting 1st of April 2015 all the way down to 23rd of March 2016, almost 1 year of data, right? Now, remember the calculations on standard deviation and volatility, as we have discussed this in the past, will be done on returns of these stocks. So how do we calculate the returns? Today's price minus yesterday's price divided by yesterday's price. That gives me the return for Tata Steel for the particular day, BSE Sensex for that day, BSE 100 for that day, and BSE 500 for the next day, for the same day, right? Now, we can double click it. So we have returns for all these portfolios, four different portfolios over multiple over this period for the period of the last 1 year. Now we can try and find out what is going to be the variance of these portfolios. So the first thing we try and find out is the variance. Remember, these are daily returns. So what we will get is daily variance. So we can use a formula called var, which is going to give us the variance, and select this data. We can also use a formula in newer versions of Excel called var.s. var.s is the variance for the sample. var.p is the variance for the portfolio. var.s will give you the same data as var. And this is what we see, what we have calculated. This is daily returns variance, variance in daily returns. We already see that individually Tata Steel has a bigger variance than what the market would have. How do we annualize it? Remember, if you annualize it, there are 250 trading days in the year, approximately, cutting for holidays and Saturdays and Sundays when the stock market is trading. So you take the daily number and you multiply with the number of trading days, which is 250, right? That's your annualized variance. That's what we are going to do to calculate the annualized variance. What do we calculate that as? So 0.08 multiplied by 250 in percentage terms. That's what the annualized variance is, correct? Now, the next stage that comes in this discussion is basically going to look at what is going to be the annualized standard deviation, because we're talking in terms of standard deviations. Remember, standard deviation is the square root of variance. So I can just find the square root using a function called sqrt, and we get the square root of variance, which is 43.5%. And now let's look at the data more carefully for the individual stocks and the portfolios, right? Now you see that when you have only Tata Steel in the portfolio, the volatility of the portfolio is 43.5%. When you add another 29 stocks to it to make it BSE 30, volatility falls to 17%. When you add another 70 stocks now to take it to BSE 100, we now see that there is no statistically significant change in the volatility. It stays about the same. It doesn't really go down. In reality, it actually goes up a little bit, but that we could ignore in terms of probably data points around a few stocks here or there. For all practical purposes, it does not decline. It stays where it is. And then when you add another 400 stocks to the portfolio, you find it doesn't move after that either, right? So 40% going down to 70% when you have 17% when you have 30 stocks, and then the next 470 stocks don't really add anything, right? The next 70 don't do anything, and the next 400 in the BSE 500 also don't really reduce the risk dramatically.